Welcome, everybody, to another Rewind episode of TMI, and thank you for being patient with us as we enjoy the holiday season. We will be back next week with a brand new episode, but for now, we present to you our episode 243, which is a tribute and celebration of the Beatles' Yellow Submarine, a movie that I always considered a holiday classic as it was always shown on TV around this time of year. But it also gives us a chance to talk about the Beatles, one of my favorite pastimes. So please sit back and enjoy our visit to Pepperland.
TMI. Confessionals of the Nerd Con. And now, your hosts, Jeff Nerfherder Chandler and Jim Kaiju Baker.
Beatles. Copyright.
Sorry.
Yellow Submarine. You can speak it, you just can't sing it. Yellow Submarine.
Oh, damn it.
We all live
in a yellow submarine.
In a yellow submarine. Give it the William Shatner reading.
William. We'd still be here.
So yeah, we're talking Yellow Submarine. The third
5 bucket, huh?
This is a 5 bucket episode. We're talking the third Beatles feature following Hard Day's Night and Help. And this obviously comes well into the Beatles psychedelic era.
Psychedelic? That's not even a...
Actually, it comes after the Beatles psychedelic era, if you think about it, because this is released in 1968. So they're already recording the White Album, which is a return to that straight ahead rock and roll sound.
So you're saying they just had to get this out of their system?
Well, I think so. I think 1967 was like a encapsulated year in itself, because they released Strawberry Fields, Penny Lane, that single. And then they came out, of course, Sgt. Pepper. All You Need Is Love was a single that year. And then they ended with Magical Mystery Tour. They ended the year with Magical Mystery Tour.
And yet a year later, they're still high.
So 68 is when they're recording the White Album. The year after, it's Get Back / Let It Be, and then Abbey Road. So
wow.
We were leaving, even though they were still using strings and horns and orchestras, it wasn't as psychedelic as 1967. If you think about it, it probably felt like a strange kind of time capsule when it was released in 1968, because two of the Beatles did not look like their animated counterparts did in the movie when the movie was released. They had already moved past that. So
that's it. We're moving on.
So it's a time capsule already on the date of its release. So it's just a very weird kind of a thing. And also the fact that when it was released, yes, the Beatles were still together, but they would only be together for like another year and a half.
Which is
and then
crazy.
They were done.
Which is just, go back to our Get Back discussion, and just watching this creative force between the four of them unfold. I will say that actually after watching this for the first time in a very long time, I have absolute newfound respect for George Harrison. He is now my favorite Beatle ever. And it's taken me a very long time to kind of understand the journey this guy went through. But this is something else.
Yes.
I think you're either on board with this or you're like, yeah, I can do without that.
Some of my history with this movie. Now, I have distinct memories of this being played. I think, since we are in the New York area, WNEW Channel 5 out of the city used to have the rights to this movie. So once or twice a year, they would play this on a Sunday afternoon. And this is an extremely Sunday afternoon, overcast day outside kind of a movie. And I have that association with it. And this is a gateway in many ways to the world of the Beatles for kids. Now, for us, I don't know if you have the same experience with it, watching it on TV whenever it was showed. But like we've said before, you kind of really couldn't choose what you watched. You were only able to enjoy what you were given by the TV stations.
Yep.
So when an animated movie came on, regardless of what it was, Cricket in Times Square or Mr. Magoo or whatever, you'd watch it.
You watched it.
So this was no different. They played this a couple of times a year. And because my parents were Beatles fans, and in their LP collection, they had the Blue album, which was the double greatest hits. they had Sergeant Pepper. So with those two, and I also had Alvin and the Chipmunks sing the Beatles. I had that record.
That's more my speed, by the way.
So with those three, I was well indoctrinated into the Beatles world already. And I don't know what came first, whether it was Yellow Submarine that got me to listen to those albums or those albums that got me to appreciate Yellow Submarine. Right. But they were very soon hand in hand in my childhood. Yes, it was an integral viewing experience for me as a kid. And it really speaks to that world where you hope that bands would inhabit, which is that world that you kind of see in the Monkees TV show. And you see it in a movie like Yellow Submarine, where these guys all live together, you know, and they're just one collective. They're not individuals that have problems like real people.
No, and I think as a kid, you kind of think of that, you know, the Partridge Family, they all live together under the roof and, you know, they get together in a good garage and they perform songs.
Yeah. And they're goofy Beatles in this movie. Yeah, it's a psychedelic. And yeah, there's all these drug references that go right over a kid's head.
I didn't catch any of them. No, I'm kidding.
But for the most part, these are like cartoon characters. Unfortunately, or fortunately, in some respects, that's kind of how I viewed the Beatles as well. You know, these lovable guys that weren't, I didn't associate with real people, you know?
No, but they also had their own cartoon in 65.
Yes, which is fascinatingly, which was the same production company that made that cartoon. Al Broddux, who is the president of King Feature Syndicate, was the makers of that cartoon. And they made a whole bunch of other cartoons as well in the 60s. So they produced the movie as well. So it was kind of like a natural progression from the TV show.
But you think like Jackson 5 had a cartoon, you know, Brady Bunch had a cartoon later. But yeah, so these people, these real world people have these larger than life personas that as a kid, you kind of lose the fact that they are humans and they're not just some crazy group that's running around for your entertainment.
Yeah. And you know what's funny is it just occurred to me now, also like introduced into this mishmash is that terrible Bee Gees movie of Sergeant Pepper.
Sergeant Pepper. Yeah, that blows me away because it's not them.
So making the Sergeant Pepper story a story from beginning to end. So in my mind, I'm listening to the Sergeant Pepper album, thinking of the story from that Bee Gees movie.
Right.
That's what this album means. So it's very confusing.
It's a convoluted
70s kid.
Because again, I have not seen this since probably college. And I'm watching this and I'm like, they don't even get credit. Like they just called Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. They're not even doing the voices.
No.
Which blew my mind. I did not know that until after the movie was over. And I started digging into this. And I'm just like, it's one thing that they're not getting their own credit. And I'm like, oh, well, that's why, because they didn't do it. They didn't make it.
Yeah. The funny thing is that just I have the Beatles anthology, the big tome, the book that came out with the show in the 90s. And it's just a set of interviews that goes from day one to the end on every subject that you can think of, Beatles wise. Huh. And of course, there's a section on the film Yellow Submarine. And Paul says right up front, we weren't interested. It was too much work to do the voices. They thought of this because, everybody loves A Hard Day's Night. Most Beatles fans will agree that that's a great, great classic film. Help, not so much. That is not as successful, I think, as A Hard Day's Night was. And I don't think the Beatles were that satisfied with that movie or the process by that time. So they had a 3-picture deal with United Artists. So they'd already made Hard Day's Night, already made Help. They had one more movie to make, and they weren't keen on making another fictional movie.
So they had those other contract. They had a contract to make 3.
So they figured, okay, this Al Broddux has pitched this idea to Brian Epstein about a feature-length film, and he'd already made the TV show. So he had this crew all ready to go. All he needed was the Beatles songs. So yeah, they weren't keen. Okay, let them do it, and that'll satisfy our third movie. And we won't even be involved, except for that little bit you see them at the end, because I think United Artists eventually said, okay, if this is going to be your third movie, you have to be involved in some way or form, right? So, all right, we'll do like 5 minutes at the end. Paul admits it was too much work to do. And then in the next stanza below that, George's take is, he says, I don't know why we didn't do the voices to this.
Because Paul said it was too much work.
Yeah. Then he says, but I bet the actors did it better anyway. They had to be more cartoony, even though we were cartoony already.
I don't know. I might have to argue that because whoever did Ringo's voice was just mumbling. You had the foresight to tell me, please use subtitles.
Yeah.
Because
I've seen it a million times and I still can't pick up what they're saying.
Oh, when Paul shows up and he's talking about dat dough and all this, I'm like, what is going on here? Yeah. I don't even know what this means.
Are these like British in jokes or what? What is this? So the story of Yellow Submarine, the actual film to talk about, it begins with, of course, it's got that very Victorian, psychedelic, almost static in a way, animation style. Where, except for those few, the Beatles and the Blue Meanies and a few of the major characters, they're the ones that have movement with a static background for the most part.
It's photocopied graphics. It's photographs that are blown out and then it's put on multiple layers and they move it around, mostly like the cityscapes and stuff like that. But I'm watching this and I'm like, is this the same animation company that does the Monty Python?
Yeah, because I think this came before Monty Python, but I think that they saw this and and used it. Yeah, because the aesthetics are there. And the one thing I did find from the art director, Heinz Eidelman, who is this Czech German graphic artist, was that he wanted the style to change like every 5 minutes. So this guy was ahead of the curve that, people's attention span can only last like 5 minutes. So let's just change it up. It is very disjointing when you first watch it because it is much. It's a lot to take in. And, as my wife pointed out, we should be high as a kite watching this thing right now. Yeah. It's been a very long time since I've seen this, but let me tell you, because I used this as a gateway for my son to enter the world of the Beatles, and he loves it. He's seen it many, many times. We actually went to Connecticut at one point to a Regal out there because they were showing it on the big screen. So we went out and watched it in the theater. I mean, to see this in complete surround sound, I know you talked about that before we hit record, with the complete surround with this music, and to see it on the big screen would have been pretty impressive. Yeah, it was nice. It was nice. But this is the kind of movie that rewards you for repeat viewings. I used to, obviously back in the day, there was no option for subtitles on TV showings. So I didn't know half of what they were saying. Right. But I just liked I liked the visuals. I liked the music. I just, took it as a whole journey.
You just went with it.
And then as an adult, seeing it, on VHS, I start to pick up on jokes here and there. But still, I'm not getting everything that they're saying because of the accents, because of the mumbling. And then, years later, getting into the subtitles and reading what some of these jokes are. I'm like, that's funny. I wish I knew that, 20 years ago.
Well, there's also there's a British mentality to some of this stuff that goes over our head.
But as we're going through, there's some things that I noted right up front, Monty Python-esque. Like, you can't get that out of your head when you see this because that's so ingrained
interesting
in those episodes.
That this came first.
That's par for the course of what you're getting here. And that's Pepperland. You're introduced to this land that's so far below the ocean that it's no longer in the ocean. It's like in a sublevel, like Journey to the Center of the Earth.
Or like where SpongeBob lives. Yes. They have a beach underwater.
Right. So
still vexes my mother to this day. She was like, I'm not letting your kids watch this because it's stupid.
So it's this idyllic land where all it is just music, butterflies, and rainbows. And in the first 5 minutes, this paradise is invaded by the Blue Meanie army.
Yeah, these Blue Meanies waste no time whatsoever.
No, they take over and they hate music.
This.
They stomp everything.
Anti-music missiles.
Yep.
I'm like, all right, okay. Yep. I will tell you right now, that flying glove, terrifying.
So yes, the Blue Meanies take over. They knock the color out of everything. And so there's all these little throwaway lines that especially the head Blue Meanie says throughout the movie. There's one point where the glove goes into the water. The glove is losing his touch. And then old Fred and the glove is chasing him. He's like, not polite to point, not polite. These stupid throwaway jokes. And then he finally gets to this pyramid where on top of the pyramid sits the Yellow Submarine.
The Yellow Submarine.
And the Lord Mayor, who's the oldest man in town, refuses to acknowledge that the Blue Meanies have come to invade.
Yeah, why was he in denial? Did he not see the chaos that was unfolding?
Well, here's the thing is that, of course, this is made in the height of hippie culture. So you're not supposed to trust these old people.
Oh, he was.
So they don't see what's going on, like the younger generation or what sees what's going on. So he's in complete denial of the Blue Meanies.
That's a little social commentary.
Social commentary here.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
He sees the zapping going on around him. And of course, the Blue Meanies have giant green apples. You know, the Beatles company apple.
Yeah, that was another nice, subtle branding thrown in there.
Lord Mayor tells Fred to get in the Yellow Submarine, which is what brought their forefathers and foremothers to Pepperland to begin with.
That was like their Mayflower.
Yeah.
How'd they all fit in there, by the way?
I mean,
I get it. It was bigger on the inside.
Well, he said it was only 2 quartets that came to Pepperland. And apparently these 8 people just populated the entirety of Pepperland. So they were
busy. Oh,
they were busy. Yeah.
Hmm.
Fred is told to go off and get help. So he does.
So Fred, right? He's now young Fred.
He's now young Fred. But what's great is get help. And then you see that great shot of above the pyramid. And suddenly the beginning strains of Yellow Submarine come in.
I will say this is genius in a sense. This is music videos before music videos existed. Because again, each song has their own look and feel, animation style wise. Like you could just play that song and play the snippet from the movie, and you're like, that's a music video. I'm completely entertained. Whether it's relevant to the actual lyrics, it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
it's still pretty impressive.
And what's great about it is that even as a kid, watching the beginning of this movie and seeing that opening where he says, go get help. And then you see the Yellow Submarine go off and then you start hearing the song. He's like, he's going to go get the Beatles. They're going to help him.
Yeah. Help. There's a ton of, I did like the Blue Meanie leader there. I don't know. At one point when they were creating devastation, he goes, I haven't had this much fun since Pompeii. Like, oh, you meanie. And
then over the credits, you see these, static pictures and you see the little submarine going through each title card.
Yeah.
So it's like the Sea of Monsters. So you're kind of seeing ahead of time what they're going to be going back through when they're making their way back to
that's
Pepperland.
Actually a good point. You're right. It's going past all that stuff, but they're going to have to encounter it on their way back.
So eventually the submarine makes its way to Liverpool, where the Beatles apparently have not left Liverpool in this reality since becoming famous. Before you even meet a Beatle, you get Eleanor Rigby. So you get the dreary everyday life and those vignettes in this animation. Now, I do want to say, and they point this out in the commentary, that there's a beautiful, beautiful 3D shot. Somehow, I don't know how they managed it, but when the sun rises and the camera pans down and all these rooftops come up and it looks layered, it looks like you can reach into it.
That's exactly what I was saying before, which is they're photocopied shots of actual photographs, but you Xerox something enough and all your tones go away and you only get dark blacks and you get your stark contrast. And then you just create multiple layers. If you're thinking about, plates of glass that have nothing but just that art on it. And as you see it like when you're driving in a car and you're watching the trees in front of you are going at a much faster rate than the ones behind you. So, as the camera comes up, everything just kind of shifts visually to create that depth of fields. And it's a really nice, simple effect. Again, completely different than the hand-drawn meanies or even the characters that we encounter. So it's pretty impressive. Very simple in execution, but it looks pretty cool on screen.
And they realized that one shot in particular, like they really mined gold there. And they said, for some reason, we could never get that same effect again. We tried it. We tried hitting that again, with the same technique, but it never looked as good as that shot did. So then the first Beatle you meet is Ringo. And he's really been kind of the focal point in A Hard Day's Night and Help. I think that filmmakers, for whatever reason, picked him out as the natural actor of the group. Well, hey, look at Caveman years later. That's the proof right there, right?
On a zug. Yeah.
But even though this is not Ringo's voice, as we said, it's not the Ringo, but it's the animated Ringo.
Well, you fooled me because I did not know that this was not them.
Yeah.
Again, I had no clue that these, and I'm like, oh, Ringo is mumbling.
And he's the sad sack. That's a carry through kind of from Hard Day's Night and Help.
Okay.
And maybe they're, some people's perceptions of the Beatles, like, this guy in the back who's got hunched shoulders behind the drum set. Yeah. And he's like, nothing ever happens to me. And as he's walking through.
I did love that. This is obviously where Scooby-Doo gets that multi-door chase sequences from.
Yes.
It has to have come.
But here's the thing is that
Scooby-Doo is before this.
No, Scooby-Doo is after this. 69 is Scooby-Doo.
69. Okay.
Yeah, and this is a year before.
You just schooled me on Scooby-Doo. I can't believe that.
So the submarine is following Ringo through the streets, but like hiding every time that Ringo turns around to look at it. And then he says at one point, he's like, it must be one of those unidentified flying cupcakes.
It's actually what the military calls them now.
So, yeah.
UACs.
Yeah. So Ringo makes it back home. So they live on this big mansion on the top of a hill. Fred lets himself in. He parks the Yellow Submarine outside the Beatles' home. He lets himself in. And here you get introduced to the other three members of the Beatles. And they do it pretty brilliantly, too, because, again, it's based on their personas.
Right, correct.
So you meet John, who is Frankenstein on a table. So
this was interesting to me. Because I'm not really sure what they were trying to imply.
What they were trying to imply here is that John had published a couple of books of prose at this time during his tenure as a Beatle, like, little paperbacks that came out. Nothing, huge. Because John fashions himself as a writer, why not show him as a literary character? When you introduce him,
you're an amalgam of different.
And here's
where
they
make a joke about Frankenstein's sister, Phyllis.
Yeah, Philistine. Yeah,
Philistine,
which went over my head,
over your head.
Yeah, but you also get Ringo saying, before Frankenstein gets up off the table, Fred says, maybe you shouldn't pull that lever. I'm a born lever puller. He says,
I'm a born lever puller.
And so here comes Frankenstein off the table. And then you see, which is a little intense for a little kid to watch. And then suddenly he becomes John, right. Yeah. Which you're thinking, well, maybe this John is on some kind of a trip. And that's why he's Frankenstein, at this point.
But it's interesting because if they didn't have any input into this, like at what point do you like, wait a minute, why am I Frankenstein? Like, what are you doing to me? And it's Frankenstein's monster, by the way.
I don't think that they did. It's not like they had.
Right. So it's like, wait a minute. Whoa.
So I'd love to get their reaction because they all go to the premiere, right? And that's, you see them at the premiere of this movie, like for the first time. Like, what did they do with us?
They could be all over these guys.
Yeah.
Make them look like idiots. Mm-hmm. And you're like, all right, well, you signed off on this. And
then you get to George, his introduction.
Which I love. This is where my newfound love for this guy shows through, because we're introduced to him on top of the mountain with a sitar.
And then I think John says to Ringo, what day is it? And Ringo says, it's sitter day. Well, then George will be here. Yeah. This is where the subtitles come in, right? Because maybe you'd be watching this and you'd think maybe he says Saturday without, and you see it. Yeah, sitter day.
Yeah, because the accent doesn't help either.
Yeah.
The subtitles show up as white. So sometimes it is hard to read them against a white background or a light background as well. So, and
then they open another door in this endless chamber of doors. You see King Kong grabbing Fay Ray out of the. I think I've interrupted something. And they close the door again. Then finally you get Paul, who is looks like he just conducted an orchestra. And he's got flowers, and an audience is cheering for him wildly. Yeah.
But see, I didn't get this dialogue at all, where they're talking about do.
Yeah, I don't know what they mean there.
That do. So again, if they're having no input, like these animators are just having a field day, going, you know what? I can't stand that, Paul.
And probably the Beatles themselves at the premiere were whispering to each other. What did I say just now? What was it?
Boy, if only the subtitles had been invented.
So, they agree to help young Fred. So they get in the Yellow Submarine and off they go.
What else have they got going on?
Just being Beatles and recording their next.
Right, correct.
Yeah. So they go off, and the first thing you hear is that end crescendo of A Day in the Life as they go out of Liverpool and into the water or whatever it is that they're going into. And the first sequence that they go through is, or the first song, once they're in the Yellow Submarine, is All Together Now.
All Together Now, which is a great song.
Which is a great song. And it was not on any of their albums. This was like an outtake that they pulled out of the can and gave the producers as a new song.
Because I think they said, 3 new songs.
Yeah.
But they didn't record the song specifically for the movie.
The only one that was recorded specifically for the movie is Hey Bulldog.
Okay, which I read was taken out.
For the US, we'll get there once we get to that sequence.
But it was on my disc.
Yeah, it was on mine as well.
Okay,
they reinstated it into the disc.
Which is sad to think that in the US you didn't get that song in this movie.
Yeah,
because it's actually a really fun song.
I love that
fun visuals.
Song. Yeah.
So, who is the guy? So that's the sequence when they're singing "All Together Now." Who is the guy in the bubbles?
Probably just some animator that was,
is that what it was? All the same guy, and I'm like, who's this supposed to be? Like, I didn't get it at
then
all.
He's got the monocle, and he's looking at them as they pass by, and they go into the sea of time, and they see all these, time motifs. Maybe time's going on strike. And the other one says, why? Shorter hours.
The fish with human arms was also very disturbing.
Yeah.
So
yes, it was. But now we get the When I'm 64 number. Yep. So they get younger first, and then they get older, and then you get the actual countdown. 1 minute is a long
1
time.
64. Yeah.
Let us demonstrate. Yeah.
And you actually hear the hair growing.
Yep.
It's like someone took a rubber balloon and just started stretching it. But this is where we get into Einstein's time-space continuum theory. Oh my God, we're getting pretty heady here.
We're going to disappear up our own existence. And I'm like, yeah, what Marty was going through in Back to the Future.
Don't kiss your mom. The joke about Cyclops with 2 eyes is called a bicyclops.
A bicyclops.
Bicyclops. We had a kinky boot beast around this time as well.
Yeah. After When I'm 64, they go into the Sea of Science. And now you hear your first George song, which is probably the most psychedelic sequence of the movie. Maybe Lucy in the Sky might be rival.
Yeah, no, that was pretty.
And the sound wave Squares, going. Yeah. So that's the Sea of Science. Then they go through the Sea of Monsters, and then you get that Bicyclops joke. This is the scene where Ringo gets ejected out of the submarine because they tell him, don't hit that button, this button. And then he presses it and he gets ejected. Now, Ringo in the anthology book says that for a couple of years after the movie was released, whenever he would encounter a kid, they would ask him, why did you press the button? He told you not to.
You're an idiot. You're in a submarine. You could have killed them all.
And then Ringo says, like they thought it was me.
It was.
And then you get that Hoover monster who's sucking up everything.
Yeah.
Now, John Lennon himself gives himself credit because he says that Al Broadux, who is the president of King's Features Syndicate, went to visit them a couple of times in the recording studio to get, to jot down some ideas, I don't know, for dialogue or whatever. So John just shot out some visual ideas, and he claims that was his idea, that thing with the suction on it,
right.
that was one of his.
Walking vacuum cleaner.
Which does actually suck up the existence of the Sea of Monsters until it sucks itself into itself. Only the Yellow Submarine is left with a white backdrop. And here's where it would be impossible to read those subtitles because it's only just a white screen, right? White. But this is where we're introduced to Jeremy.
Now, Jeremy is the boob, right?
He's the boob, yes.
The boob.
According to a mod Odyssey, a put-on of pseudo-intellectuals.
Okay.
He's doing a million things at once. He's writing his memoirs and writing poetry. And,
right. He was
and bragging about it at the same time.
Yes,
but this is my favorite sequence, actually, is the Nowhere Man sequence. I love this because that rainbow, tunnel that they go through.
Yep.
And it's just beautiful. The colors on this thing, especially the Blu-ray, it just is.
Yeah,
hurts my eyes. Sure it's so nice.
The Blu-ray's got to be impressive. I was watching this on DVD. Now, on the Blu-ray, does it go full widescreen?
Yes, it does.
Oh, it does.
And Ringo, who is taken to task by Paul as being just a sentimentalist, asks them to let Jeremy join them for the rest of the journey. So he does. They get into the Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds number, which is probably besides All You Need Is Love is the one most memorable number from when I watched this as a kid. Just because it's got all those like rotoscoped kind of images where they're like
people dancing and stuff.
It looks like they're actually taking found footage from the 20s and 30s and just animating it and putting it in there. And like John Lennon becomes Fred Astaire at one, or
like I said, these are music videos.
Yeah,
because each one has its own distinct look and feel. Yeah, you're right. It is probably rotoscoped.
And then going into the Sea of Holes, which again looks very 3D. Whatever effect that they used for that Sea of Holes.
And there is a lot of hole jokes. A lot of holes.
I've got a hole in my pocket because Ringo takes one.
That's a good callback, by the way.
Yeah. So from this, once they hit the Sea of Holes, they go through one of the holes because you see a Blue Meanie come out of one of those holes and abduct Jeremy from them. Yeah. And then you realize, okay, one of these holes leads to Pepperland, and that's what they do. So suddenly they're in Pepperland, and they get the situation.
About time these meanies make a comeback.
Yep. They meet the Lord Mayor, who tells them that they are dead ringers for the originals, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, who have also been captured by the Blue Meanies.
This is where some of the British slang, because he says brekkie, which is short for breakfast, right? Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I could do with a bit of brekkie. He's
brekkie. Yeah. But do you know that music that like so synonymous with like waking up in the morning? Like, where does that music come from? Because we all know, yes. I mean, we all know it. Like that, like you can't think of anything else except waking up in the morning with the birds chirping and you're lifting up the window with that.
Yeah, apparently, just like everything else, it's John Lennon, Paul McCartney original.
Probably.
But they figure out they have to make it to the bandstand on the top of this hill, which is surrounded by sleeping Blue Meanies.
Yeah.
And so Paul at one point sings Tiptoe Through the Meanies as they're going.
Right. And then somebody says that we have to coagulate with the crowd. And I'm like, is that correct?
I don't know.
I don't know.
But they make it to the top, and there's all Sgt. Pepper's instruments, and they've got the drum head from the album cover, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band.
Yeah, we saw that early too.
In there. So they dress up as Sgt. Pepper and try to sneak their way out the next morning after you hear that blissful morning music, as you just mentioned. Mm-hmm. And then the clown thing. Some of these things are really nightmarish. Some of these things that the clown is
not.
The clown alarm goes off. The Sgt. Pepper number comes on. So they finally start to get an edge over the Blue Meanies. And it's an exhilarating number as well, which is what that song is, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. After Sgt. Pepper, they're about to go into Billy Shears, A Little Help from My Friends, and then the camera pans over to where the Meanies are. But here's the thing. This has always bothered me, is that even as a kid, I knew that Ringo sings A Little Help from My Friends. But when they sing the Billy Shears part, they're gesturing to Lennon.
Yeah, which is weird.
As Billy Shears, which is wrong. He doesn't sing A Little Help from My Friends.
Well, if only they had participated in the making of this movie, they could have pointed out the mistake. Do you think they're sitting in the theater going, wait a minute?
Yeah.
How did John get that?
Yeah.
Ringo's like, son of a...
You go over to the Meanies, and that's where the glove comes back into it. And the chief Meanie is Glovey. And as he's petting him, and then the glove goes off, and then you get the big number, All You Need Is Love, where John is battling the glove with the word, physical word, love.
Well, glove minus the G is love. You saw it coming a mile away.
And then they find the actual Sgt. Pepper band in like the big glass bowl that they were encaptured in by the Meanies at the beginning. One of them says, and I never heard this joke until years later, they're saying so many things, but one of them says, oh, it's bluegrass. Must be from Kentucky, like Kentucky bluegrass.
Right. Yeah.
And then, Ringo has a hole in his pocket. So he puts the hole on the glass, and then out comes Sgt. Pepper's band. And Paul says, look, it's decanting.
Yeah, there's a lot of throwaway lines here that I could, like you said, repeat viewing would definitely help.
So then they meet Sgt. Pepper. They're admiring each other because they look like each other and they're dressed like each other. And then here comes the Hey Bulldog sequence with the 3-headed bulldog.
I thought he had 4 heads.
Well, maybe he had 4 heads.
Yeah.
But it's a fun song, as you said.
It is a really fun song. And this is probably the first time I've ever heard it.
It came out in England in July of 1968. And for whatever reason, it didn't come out in the U.S. until November of 1968. And it was in the European cut, that song, But, because producers felt that Americans did not have the attention span.
Oh, we got to cut something.
We got to get right to the end, because in a way I agree, because the showstopper number here is All You Need Is Love.
Yes, correct.
The Meanies are, for all intents and purposes, defeated.
Yep.
So to have these, it just seems like besides the point, just to have a couple more songs in the movie. So I agree to an extent, but because it's such a fun sequence, I like seeing it now.
Right.
Now that it's in here.
Yeah, you almost think that maybe it should have just been put in somewhere else.
Somewhere before the glove
before
scene.
You get to the glove scene.
Before you get to the glove.
Yeah, because that is the climax.
Yeah. So then you get the turning of the Blue Meanies, where let's all live together. Of course, that 60s message, peace and love. So let's all commingle, as they say.
Until we start segregating the blues.
And then the Blue Meanie says to Max, well, where should we go? And Max, the little henchman, Argentina, which is where all the Nazi war criminals ended up.
That's a deep cut. Wow.
And then you get the second George Harrison song. So he's got two numbers here.
Yeah, George.
All Too Much, which is like a completely psychedelic acid rock sequence, which segues into the actual Beatles. So they filmed this in February 68, like right before they shipped off to India to have their Maharishi experience. So already, like, only Paul and Ringo actually kind of look like what their cartoon counterparts do.
They don't really match up.
Yeah, George has shaved his beard, so he doesn't look like the George from the movie. And John has shaved his mustache and has started to grow his sideburns out, so he doesn't look like the John from the movie, but yet they're there. So George has the motor, the callback to that scene. Paul has love, in his hand. Yep. And then Ringo has the physical hole in his pocket that he pulls out. Yep. And then, of course, John says he's got a telescope. He's like, well, there's the Blue Meanies have been seen in the vicinity of this theater. We've got to go out singing. And it looks like they're having a good time, right? For all intents and purposes. But apparently, according to Paul, it's like, well, we couldn't be bothered doing this. None of us were happy to be there on that day, but we did it anyway.
Which is sad. I mean, we talked about that with the Get Back, which is you hear the stories, the lore that they were just miserable. And yet, whatever Peter Jackson did, it made it look like, outside of the George fiasco, that they were having some fun.
Yeah. And it certainly looks that way. Maybe they don't remember it as well.
I was going to say, maybe sometimes memory has a way of kind of warping your whatever. So they do look like they're having fun.
Yeah, it does. And it's a black backdrop. So what they were going to do, what the plan was just to animate the backdrop, to have them look like they were in the animated world, but they didn't have time to finish it. So that never got done.
It is just like an add-on. Oh, yeah, we did get a paycheck for this. We probably should show up.
Yep. But again, it lends to that time capsule element, because again, only a couple of years later they were broken up, and here they are together,
right?
So it's like instantly dated, this movie, because of that aspect of it. But again, you hear All Together Now over the closing credits. So it kind of makes that song, apart from the title, the theme of this movie is All Together Now.
Yeah, because you get it when they're first all together in the submarine. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, this is, like you said, this is a time capsule. This is something else, and the art style doesn't help it because it is very dated.
Yes.
The look and feel of this pop art to psychedelic shimmer, as it's being referred to. It's like you're just making up words now.
Yeah, I know.
To try and explain what it is that you're freaking doing here.
And just talking about, you were saying how, you wonder how much they must have felt watching this for the first time. And again, this goes to show how little involvement they had in it. They saw the designs of their characters. So obviously they knew the direction it was going in, but they didn't, I don't know if they saw the script or what have you, but Paul said that he was surprised that they went so heavily with the psychedelic option.
It was 60s.
Because at the beginning, when this was first floated by them, he's like, I always loved the Disney movies, and I thought this could be like the greatest Disney type movie ever, with our music in it. Like he said, like a Bambi type animation style is something that he was hoping.
Which is that music shows up at the beginning of Bambi.
Yeah.
That may be where I get where it comes from.
He literally said, like, I was thinking of more like a Bambi in my head when they brought the idea to us. Yeah.
Because that Heinz Edelman hated Disney. to the point where if you look, the Meanies have Mickey Mouse hats to make them the bad guys.
Mm-hmm. But he admits, Paul does admit that he does like it now, but he didn't like it that much when it first came out because of that. You know, in that time, he was critical of it because it took the psychedelic route.
Wow. Well, like it is what it is now. I did watch the Mod Odyssey, which is the feature on the Blu-ray. You said it was on my DVD as well. Mm-hmm. And there's this interview with this art director, this Heinz Edelman, and they were talking about really trying to capture the personality of each one of these Beatles. And he makes these mentions that George walks like a cowboy. Now, I watch this and I don't, they all do the same thing. I don't really pick up on any individual. You get more of it in the dialogue, I think, than the way that they're animated. But George walks like a cowboy. Paul is a confident young executive. John's the showman, and Ringo is the schoolboy Charlie Chaplin. So this is the mentality they went into as far as portraying these characters, whether they agree with them or not, because they had no part. This is how the animation studio perceived them.
Going a little bit further on Paul's opinion of it, he said that if they hadn't gone the psychedelic route and they were looking to do like a more Disney classic animation style, he would have been more keen on writing and recording fresh music for it. But he said, if you want to go psychedelic, you can use what we've already got. We're not going to.
And they're done that kind of a thing.
Exactly.
Boy, to get a Disney-esque Paul written music would have been
I don't know
that would have been. I mean, listen, he's gone pop over the years, when you get into Wings and some of his standalone stuff. It would have been interesting. Well, I guess we'll never know now.
Do you know the story? The Zemeckis was interested in remaking this.
I just saw this. I was hoping that I could actually dazzle you with it, but apparently, 2009, that this as late as 2009, this was talked about being brought back with Zemeckis, more like a Polar Express.
And as a Disney movie.
Yeah, which would have been a watered down. I'm kind of happy it didn't happen.
Yes, with Polar Express technology, that would have been a nightmare. It would have been terrible.
They were talking about bringing in the Beatles tribute band Fab Four to do the motion capture. So you're talking like right around the age or the era of like Monster House, A Christmas Carol with Jim Carrey.
Jim Carrey, yeah.
And I think Mars Needs Moms. Like all that is right around that era, right? Coming off the Polar Express, where they're really starting to kind of hone in on this motion capture, these characters that look human, but are kind of void of actual personality in the faces. Yeah. And I guess part of it was the fact that Mars Needs Moms, I think was the death knell. That they were like, we're not doing this. But they were talking about doing a Cirque du Soleil show. They were talking about some kind of a Broadway musical based on this. So sometimes it's better off to just walk away. Carrie Ellis was set to voice George.
Oh, was he really?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
They had all four. There was four actors that were locked into the four characters, but he's the only big name that I can see. David Tennant was in talks to play the Chief Blue Meanie.
Was he?
So, and the only other fun fact that I can bring to this table, which is Mark Hamill references this movie as his inspiration for the Joker, based on the way that the Chief Meanie speaks.
Really?
That is his inspiration. Yep.
Do you find that to be true? Is there correlation to you?
I would have to go back. I mean, yeah, because he is, you talk about the subtleties of he's over the top and he's bursting at the seams, and then he's very glovey. So he goes like these, and I think that Mark Hamill kind of does that a lot with the Joker. These high crescendos, right, and lows. I would have to go back and watch his performance in the Batman animated series, but I can easily see this being a huge inspiration for him as far as the way this character is portrayed. So
now, did you read anything about the guy that originally voiced George in Yellow Submarine?
No.
The actor allegedly was a deserter from the British Army and was arrested in the middle of recording.
Really?
So the
No
guy,
wonder why he was mumbling. He didn't want them to recognize him.
so the guy that voiced Ringo and he also voiced the Chief Blue Meanie had to take over as George. So it's half the movie is one guy doing
get outta
George,
here.
and the other half is this new guy doing George.
Paul did the voice of the Chief Blue Meanie. So you're saying this halfway through, he had to step in and do George's
and
voice.
Not only do Ringo, but do George as
Ringo.
well. Yep.
Wow. Huh.
I wonder if they actually arrested the guy mid-recording session.
Right. Excuse me, sir. We're recording here. No, sir, you need to step outside.
Yeah.
Deserter.
We mentioned Monty Python quite a bit earlier, but I think also a lot of that animation, like in the middle bits of Sesame Street and Electric Company.
Oh, yeah. Good call on that. Yeah. That really has a psychedelic. Again, it's a product of its time.
Yeah.
You think about even like when they count to 8 and you got all the flowers and the graphics are flying left and right. Very reminiscent of that 1 through 64 when I'm 64.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, big influence. This thing's, I'm sure there's tons of other stuff that's out there that were influenced by this at the time.
Yeah. And it wasn't a huge hit. It made over $1 million worldwide, which is back then is, quite a bit of money, but
yeah, sure.
To compare it, I was reading to compare it to the top moneymakers of 68, they made like in the vicinity of 50 million. So this was kind of small change compared to that. But if you think about it, this is past the major popularity of the, mop top era of the Beatles.
Right.
And it's going to be perceived as a kid's movie because it's a cartoon. So you're not really getting the hippie generation to come see this.
Yeah.
But you've got to
hate. I don't, the fact that it's animated, thus just making it a kid's movie.
Yeah. Well, especially, I don't think that it would have that stigma today, but especially then, when animated movies were kids' movies.
Sure, because it was 100% of the time. It was either Disney or Saturday morning.
Yeah. So this would have been, I can see how this would have been a hard sell to the, whatever audience that they were looking for besides kids. Maybe final words on this might be for the Beatles themselves. George, and I kind of said this earlier, George says that, his son watched Yellow Submarine and loved it when he was a kid. And he said he really thinks that most kids, I don't know if you can say so much today, but, during that time, 70s, 80s, when TV was really what you were seeing in terms of movies for a kid rather than VHS tapes, because they would show it on TV, most kids went through the experience of seeing Yellow Submarine. And a lot of kids know the Beatles from Yellow Submarine. So he credits it with that.
It's not a bad introduction to them. I mean, the songs are stellar. They're all the songs we know, except for Hello Bulldog.
We should have all known it. And it still was on the soundtrack that came out in the US on the album, but nobody would have put it together with the movie. Oh, it's just another song that's on the soundtrack.
Right.
And John, in one of his, final interviews in 1980, called it his favorite of the Beatles movies.
Huh.
And they weren't even involved for more than 5 minutes.
Maybe that's why he was like, I had nothing to do with it.
Yep.
And yet I still got a paycheck. Loved it.
So I would like right now to induct Yellow Submarine into the 5 Bucket Club.
Well played.
Yeah. So thank you, everybody, for listening. Hope you enjoyed it.
Yes.
So what are we doing next week?
I was just going to ask, are we actually going to tease next week? Because
why don't we? Because we already have the schedule, right? So
we
Bullet
do.
Train is
Bullet Train, the Brad Pitt vehicle. No pun intended. Pun intended. Whatever.
Pun intended. Yeah.
Pun intended. This looks like a lot of fun.
We'll see if it is or not next week.
Do either one of us need to read the book to compare?
I think maybe it would work in our favor if we didn't.
Yeah. That sounds like fair enough. And while we're there, should we throw Mama off the train?
Let's throw her.
Let's do it.
Let's get rid of her. Throw Mama from the train.
This is some inspired pairing right here. For no other reason that.
Hey, it's got trains, right? It's a train episode. Yeah.
Yeah. We could have gone Silver Streak. We could have done tons of other train related, but Bullet Train looks like it's going to have a little tongue in cheek. So let's go all in.
Yeah.
Throw Mama from the train, baby.
And anybody that's
And
been with us
Ramsey.
for a long time, I'm still proud. One of our early episodes was a Walking Dead episode, and we titled it Throw Negan, from the Train. Yeah.
I do remember that. So just like Ringo's hole in his pocket, we're doing a deep callback.
Yes, we are.
Yeah. All right. Well, that was a lot of fun. I enjoyed this movie. Yellow Submarine is it available for streaming?
It's on the iTunes store. So if you're able to hook up your computer to your TV, you can watch it streaming.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to see if I could just mirror it. I got it from the library, but I only had a VHS or a DVD as my option. But you're saying it is available on Blu-ray. I would probably, if you can watch it on a Blu-ray, I would imagine that it's got to be spectacular.
Yeah, and the 5.1 on the songs, the mix on this is amazing. Yeah,
and that is one thing that they did specifically for this movie is go back and remixed it.
Yep,
because that's not the way they were recorded.
Just like anything that you listen to in 5.1, if I have many albums that I purchased on 5.1, so just the separation and as an audio nerd, I go to each of the 5 speakers and listen for the guitar track.
To listen to the that's awesome.
Just the drum track by itself over in this one, just the vocal track over. So you hear things that you never heard before.
Yeah, I mean, 99% of what we listen to is probably through the radio. Little mono speakers in your car on the way to and from work.
Yeah, most
people listen to music as just background noise. It's not really meant as an experience anymore.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
So that does need to come back.
It does.
So there you go. That was fun. I enjoyed.
And hope you join us next week.
There you go. Thanks for listening.
Bye. If you like what you just heard, be sure to follow TMI Confessionals of the Nerd Kind on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Spotify, or whatever you listen to your podcasts on. Also, be sure to email us at tmipodcast2018@gmail.com.
You can also follow us on all of our socials. We're on Instagram, X, Facebook, Threads. Just go to tmiconfessionalspodcast.com. All of our links are there. And leave us a 5-star review. See you at the concession stand.
Liverpool can be a lonely place on a Saturday night. And it's Thursday morning.
Ringo's like, son of a